A lot of the people I've been sort of speaking to about this film, I mean, I guess it's to no fault of their own, but most people, of course, know zero about gas drilling and what it is, and in fact think it's quote-unquote clean.
Well, that was the same state that I was in when I started to work on it, because I really had no idea what this was about. And I was offered a gas lease at my house, a family house in northeastern Pennsylvania. And that sort of started me off on an investigation of the subject, and it was really an astounding roller coaster ride. And that continues to this day, because it brought me all the way to Australia.
So what, in a nutshell, is natural gas drilling?
Well,
I mean, that's a fairly complex question.
No, of course. I mean, in the United States, we're in the largest natural gas drilling campaign in history onshore. So what that means is there's this new technique called hydraulic fracturing or fracking, which basically you inject toxic material under the ground at enormous pressure, and that breaks apart underground formations and releases natural gas. So it's kind of like turbo drilling. It's worse. And that exploded all across the United States starting in 2005 when Dick Cheney and the Energy Task Force put it into the 2005 Energy Bill, exempting the process from the Safe Drinking Water Act. And that's called the Halliburton loophole. And that allowed this form of drilling, which, like I said, injects this toxic material into the ground by huge quantities, millions of gallons, to break apart these formations, to go forward without any regulation.
And Halliburton just happens to be Dick Cheney's own company, right?
It was this is clear that this is a project that he had as the CEO and brought it to the White House with him.
Now, this film, one of the things I found really inspiring about it was that you basically, I mean, you've already done a film, but you sort of just picked up a camera and started making this film, and then people jumped on board. Is that right?
Oh yeah, that's right. I mean, it was an independent project from the very beginning, starting with myself. I was actually on my way to Las Vegas to open my first feature film called Memorial Day. I'm a theater director, and I created a lot of projects in the theater in New York, and those actually have gone around the world. But this is the first time I was making a documentary, and it was because I started to add this up. I mean, we got this letter in the mail, and that was also happening all across the state, all across New York, and it was also going to affect the New York City watershed, much like the parallel here with the Sydney watershed, as far as I understand it. And, went out west and started to film, I mean, after some initial explorations. Just finding out what this was all about was rather astounding, alarming. I mean, you could hear when we showed early explorations to friends, and their jaws were on the floor going, why doesn't anybody know about this? How have you stumbled onto this? And then I realized that the story was really emblematic of something that was happening all over the country, and indeed all over the world, as this new technique was making a play for the future of the energy of the world.
What I found really effective about the film is that it feels sort of incredibly more sincere in a way, because most mainstream documentaries that we get distributed to countries like this are very, very sort of produced from the word go, and you can sort of feel that about them, whereas this sort of, you can feel it sort of unfold. So you didn't walk into that first shoot knowing that, like other documentaries, they know the punches, you know what I mean?
Well, I think that when you're making anything, you have to operate from questions more than answers. I mean, that's drama. And it was these questions. It's an investigation. It's a detective movie. And that's how I felt. I felt like, all right, I'm on this investigation. And I ended up finding an amazing editor and collaborator in Matthew Sanchez, who helped really structure the film. But for a very long time, it was go out, get footage. We took this massive road trip, most of which was by myself, and then came home, and there was the two of us sort of figuring out what to do with it. And we both have the background, I think, of being in the avant-garde and being in that kind of experimental theater or film tradition. And we wanted to make something that was alive. We didn't want, it's very personal. And this idea of if it made us laugh at home while we were working on it, then it was good. I mean, if it was portrayed the intimacy, because when I was out there with people in Wyoming and Texas, these places vastly culturally different from where my background is, sort of New York, Pennsylvania, and this bond emerges. And I'm out there with cowboys in the middle of the fields. And it was really something extraordinary for me, coming from the East Coast, to encounter America in that way. And so we wanted to really just transmit the personal event of it.
Yeah, it does. It's very sort of almost got a humanistic element to it that a lot of sort of lefty political docos we don't see, which seem a little bit more sort of, I read a lot of reviews that say, well, this isn't condescending like, say, Michael Moore's films are, which I must admit I agreed with a lot.
The sense of humor in the film, I think, emerges organically from the people in it. And we were really conscious that we never wanted to be condescending or sarcastic or pejorative and make fun of things, but that there was an ironic sort of dry humor that kept emerging. When people can light their water on fire right out of the tap, sit there with a Bic lighter and turn on the faucet, and this combustion comes on, you have to jump back, I think that the only thing you could do at the first level is laugh, and then it hits you. So there's wanting to be true to that, and then develop a kind of way of framing this, which was going to be intelligent for people rather than, go for something cheap. I mean, there's explosions in the film, which is good, because most films have explosions, and we have explosions, and that's good.
Yeah.
But it did want to make something more thoughtful.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I must admit, I guess it crosses the cultural boundaries in that way. I'm from rural ghetto myself. So, I mean, I really related to that. With those people are so hard done by, in the end, they have a very black way of getting through life. And that really comes out in that film. It reminded me of my family and their sense of humor a lot. So it works really well, I think.
That's cool. And then there's this other journey in the film of me trying to get in touch with the gas companies, trying to get them to sit down with me, trying to get them to answer questions, and they won't do it. And then in the end, of course, you watch them being cross-examined by Congress, the United States Congress, and they lie to Congress. And you're sitting there going, oh, my God, how am I here? How am I a fly on the wall in this situation? And, of course, now that's even crazier, because we're out here in Australia talking about how this is going to affect this continent. It's amazing.
And wonderful revenge. The film's been so successful, of course. I mean, they've now, of course, had their slap back at you.
Yeah, they're attacking the film. They don't want people to see it. There's a smear campaign against myself, against the film, against the people in it. It's really horrifying how you could... Look, this is an industrialization process. It's not a huge leap of imagination to think it's going to be contaminating. But then when you combine that with this particular technique, which is this explosion of chemicals under the ground, that they're getting into people's water supplies, that they're getting into the aquifers, that there's ignition at the faucet, it's amazing that they take no responsibility whatsoever, and at every stage of the game deny it. I mean, what they're going to say here is, oh, this has nothing to do with the way it's going to happen in Australia. Well, we heard that in Pennsylvania, not the way it happened in Texas, So they do this leapfrogging thing, and at every stage of the process to deny what is coming next.
Mm-hmm. Well, and of course, even though every government can claim that, I mean, our government's now busy going, but this is the Australian government, but at very least the corporate model doesn't change no matter where they go and plunder, does it? So, it's a lesson to be learned, I think.
I wanted to say that it has been awesome to be here. The audiences coming out for the film are terrific questions. It seems terrifically engaged. So I'm really excited to continue this tour of doing Q&As and everything along with the film, both, I think, here in Sydney and in Melbourne. Did I pronounce that right?
You did.
Cool.
Well done.
All right.
Not Melbourne, like most of the Americans say. Cool. Well, thank you very much. It's been great having you on the show, and I think Australian audiences will lap this one up. And best of luck, and we hope you go crack something else open for us soon in another film.
Thank you so much.
Cheers. Director Josh Fox speaking about Gasland, which opens Australia-wide in cinemas November 18th. If you want to know more about not only the film, but the topic as well, including how it's playing out here in our own backyard, visit www.gasland.com.au.